Monday evening. Good to see a few familiar faces over here. And for your interest in the social service sector, for context, I am Jaslyn. I'm the co-founder of the Courage Chapter, and we just launched our third cohort of the social service returnship program for professionals who are looking to transition into the social sector. And today we are very, very honored to kickstart our final info session today with our info session panelists who also have very beautiful stories of transitions into the sector as well. So at any point of time, feel free to pop your questions into the chat and we will pick it up along the way lah. Just to get everyone like warmed up in terms of like how we expect this info session to be, right? This session is meant to be interactive. So if you have heard about the Courage chapter before, can you type a yes in the chat, please? Are you on you? Anybody? Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, thank you.
Hey,
Hey, yes, Boa. Wow, okay. Cool. At least those who have responded, they have heard about the Courage chapter before. So maybe what I'll do is that I will just have a very light touch in terms of like who we are and what we do. Just two slides before we kick it off for the panelist session. For context of those who may not know or are too shy to type yes, no, we are a social enterprise that helps unlock the experience of senior talents for organizations and the community to gain the wisdom they need. So we see ourselves as a connector between the both worlds, the experienced professionals on one side and the organizations on another side. What we do is that we provide a safe and practical space for individuals like yourself to explore the next chapter. And then we connect you to opportunities in various sectors and of course in different forms of contribution. So for instance, in the social service sector, you can work on short-term projects, you can work on fractional work, or you can even go back to traditional full-time employment, really depending on your needs and also the organization needs as well. So we're here to serve both the senior professionals and the organizations as well, and we see ourselves as a conduit for that to happen. And on emphasize or spotlighting on the senior professional sides, what we do is that we help our talents, our community go through what we call the 4 Cs framework. To find the first C, clarity about who they are at this current stage and where they would like to go. So including things like motivations, transferable skills, and strengths. And then we go about building the capacity to get to where they want to go. So in the social service context, it's understanding the sector better. So what are the mindsets and the skill sets and expectations and culture, and then how you then communicate your value, your transferable skills into that new sector. And then opportunities, we talk about creating value. So in this case, to be matched with the various projects and various roles within the social service sector. And finally, underpinned by care, where we have ongoing efforts to support your journey throughout your transition. We hope that today's panel and sharing can help you kickstart your exploration of the social service sector. Um, And you could see over here, this is a screenshot of the various social service sectors social service clients that have worked before. And you can see at the bottom of the slide, we don't do roles like social worker, psychologists, but where we see ourselves is that our community is great at roles, projects such as program delivery, engagements and partnerships, corporate functions, and digital and innovation roles and projects, right? And as we were speaking to various charities, we we found that there was a common thread among them, right? So the thing is that some of them had really good experience with corporate folks. But then we also had some of them who didn't really have a very good experience in with corporate professionals. They had some concerns. I think when we speak to our social service clients, is that, hey, are you sure or not the corporate professionals, do they really understand the culture? Do they understand how the ways of working? And sometimes I think they had had bad experience where the new hire struggled to fit into the company, and then they eventually left. So I think you can understand from a hiring perspective, right? There might be a lot of churn, and it's just a not good use of time for both sides, right? So we then asked the social service, our clients, right, what if we created a program to help corporate professionals who can actually have like the decades of experience and help them understand the context of the social service sector a little bit more, help you meet them and then source for talents and try them out for a few months before you decide like, whether or not this person is actually a good fit for the sector or a good fit for the organization you work with. So that's how the social service sector returnship program was born. And we are now on our third edition, and we are really, really happy to invite two of our friends um to join us to share their experience here today. So maybe I'll just bump over. We are really, really honored to have Wendy Yo, who is the Head of Talent and Transformation at YWCA and also the founder of Insights. Wendy has had a very interesting career, starting off her career actually in the social service sector and then moving into corporate HR. And now she's back into the social service sector. And also for context, right? She's also our trainer for this returnship program as well. And we have Po Hua, who is our poster child. He has had 3 decades of experience in the technical sales leadership, but has now made a sector and also not just a sector switch from corporate to social service. He has also made a functional switch from tech sales to learning and organizational development at St. Andrew's Autism Center. Okay, and with that, maybe I will then spotlight on to Wendy and Powa to share a little bit more about themselves. Who would like to go first?
Poa, why don't you go first?
Oh, sure.
Mm.
Hi, everybody. My name is Powa. I'm on the returnship second cohort. So that was just, let me think, it's less than a year, October last year, right? Yeah, so that was actually the beginning of, I guess, a massive change in my own life in terms of career. So currently, I work in St. Andrew's Autism Center. I am the learning and development and organization development as the primary role, but there are many, many other things that we do in the organization, as you probably will hear from some of us. Uh, you might be given a certain title, but there are a lot of other projects or a lot of the other areas where maybe some of your previous skills are put into play. So that's what I'm doing today. Should I go further or we just do introduction first, Jaslyn?
Let's have Wendy also to share a little bit more
Okay.
about herself.
Great. So myself, just like how Jesslyn has shared earlier on, I've started my career actually in the social service sector itself. Being a young entrant into the work world, I started off actually dealing with youth offenders as a probation officer with then the Ministry of social welfare and family development, right? And in that first 10 years of my life, I really was working on realizing my own professional potential. Started off with social service, and then I moved on to be a military psychologist with the Singapore Armed Forces, right? Those two spaces really allowed me to grow my expertise deeply, largely in the space of leadership development, culture development, and learning and development, right? Which is a subset of HR itself. So what
Mm.
then happened after? It's a very intentional move to look at how I could start growing my leadership potential as well myself. And I saw myself then leaving the government sector and getting into the corporate space, consulting as well, starting off with learning and development and slowly, growing the breadth of my experience and expertise in the full suite of HR. So now me sitting here, it's really, me looking at the third 10 year of my career. Might be 5, might be 10, I'm not too sure. But it's really about recalibrating and to a certain extent, reclaiming control over my career. I mean, I've given up a lot of time to grow myself and then to grow leadership and therefore have that impact on teams across organization. I'm asking myself at this point of time, if I wanted to reclaim time, right, then where would I meaningfully spend that time in the next 5 to 10 years, right? And coming back into social service was a very natural move for me. Never left, had continued to dabble in different volunteer capacities over the 20 years of my career. Yeah, and happy to share more in the subsequent parts of this panel session about what that journey has been like, and yeah, and if I had some of this success tips that I could get across to the rest of you in this room.
Ooh. So guys, I really popped in the LinkedIn profiles of both Wendy and Powa, and feel free to drop in the questions that you have in the Zoom chat and we will get to them lah. Maybe with that, I think just now, Powa, before Wendy introduced herself, maybe you want to share a little bit more about, can you talk through how do you make that sector and that functional switch when you join when you join St. Andrew's Autism Center?
So it started off with, I think when we were hitting our the 50s and so on, there's a part of me that says, am I going to do the same thing for the rest of my life in the later stage of life? So I think there's always this concept about um, I want to do something that doesn't expire, but it increases with value in terms of my age and so on. So that's a bit of thinking. Then I read this book about this new retire mentality by Mitch Anthony. So that gave me a certain impression that there's also such thing as retirement. As long as God give us good health, we still continue to be engaging, serving. Because a person who thinks that retirement is all about vacation, go holiday here and there, normally won't last more than, and in terms of that the excitement of all this vacation won't last more than a year or two. So if I'm throughout my life, I've always been quite happy with my work. So that sort of engagement is important to me. So I was always looking for what are the ways I can continue to build something that's different that will last through my next 10, 20, or even 30 years. So that was something that came. The other part, of course, is also there was also a push factor. So I was in a multinational company, doing the regional work. I've been to also Asia Pacific and so on. So just like probably some of you or in the IT industry, companies was acquired. So a lot of the senior guys like us were all, in a sense, were out of job in some ways. But that was also a good time for me to, in a sense, took a nice long 1 year, 2 years break actually, to think through exactly. And there's also the time when I was free to experiment, to try, to learn many, many new things. But the good thing, I think, is the trying, right? We started to volunteer in different places, venture into some social services to see what's happening. And that sort of get the whole thing going. Just a little bit of context. I'm also a parent of 4 kids, two with autism. So they are more or less adults. One is 18 and one is 21. So I'm working in St. Andrew's Autism Center. So in some sense, there's a bit of my own personal area that, hey, can I do something more for people with autism? But also maybe in a sense, I'm thinking for my own children as well. Is there something that hopefully when they grow up without me around, there's a better support system in the society? So that's also a little bit of inclination that. So three things all come together: a push factor, something that I was thinking for the future, and something that I think is deep inside me sort of came together. And yeah, that's how I got started in terms of. Actually, not really. Then I joined internship. I think that was. I mean, before
Thank
that we were
you.
volunteering different things. Yeah, maybe I'll talk about later what happens after the internship. Yeah, but that was
Could
6 months ago, so it was a good journey. And now I'm doing a full-time work at St. Andrew's Autism Center.
I mean, maybe Poa, since you're on the topic, right? And I think the chat is quite quiet. Maybe do you just want to share what's the returnship program? I mean, Poa
Sure.
can do it better than me.
Oh, no.
And
So,
share about your journey. I think where during immersion day, the conversations, then after that with the different departments that you're in as well.
okay, sure. So returnship, I think to me sometimes all of us have got different things to invest in or put our time. So to me, it took a while for me. I learned a lot about Courage Chapter then. I haven't got a chance to talk to any one of them, but I understood their mission and so on. It resonated with me a lot. So it was also timing. I was doing my ACLP during a period of time. So it happened that the October returnship, I think we were able to commit. So number one, you got to make the decision to say, hey, I want to commit on doing something, spending the 3 days. So that 3 days, I think a few things happened. One is we have a gathering of very similar, like-minded people that are similar in whether it's in age or in stage of life or in the stage of thinking. And that one had a lot of the networking part. I think that's important. We were given a lot of introduction about some of the uh, possible job roles based on certain corporate businesses that experiences that some of us have. But the one that I found very, very valuable during the returnship was the opportunity to meet with many of the leaders in various social services organizations. So I think we had the leaders, including Bernard, which is my St. Andrews CEO, um, quite a number of them, Tim Uy and so on. To me, those were very, very good people who are deeply involved in social services. And they were not telling us the rosy story. They tell us the real stories. And I think that was the one that gave me a little bit, not just the initial interest, but we sort of certain awareness, a little bit clearer that, hey, this is something that if I'm going in there, this is something that I have to prepare myself in. And so that returnship gave us those aperture, right, to see a bit more. And that was a start. And then after that, after the returnship program, I think some of the potential employers were also they call it the immersion program, is it? Where they offer a short term 3 months or something like that for a short term role. And so for me, that was really, really good because I wasn't sure whether I'm going to social service, whether even after the course, there were more questions actually. But the 3 months sort of gave us a in my old technology term, proof of concept for both parties. Whether it's something that's fit for me, whether it's something that's fit for the organization, there's really it's an ideal environment for that. So I think there was a position opened up in St. Andrews initially as a project manager for some of the migration project. So I took up that role. It went through the same process, some interviews and so on, and that's how I got started in that program. So starting is just part one. So by this, I got a chance during that 3 months to work with various organizations in St. Andrews. Also get to know quite a lot of different people, and maybe later on I'll share where that role that I was doing didn't really fit as well. But in the end, I managed to talk to others, and I think other opportunities was given, and that ultimately end up to where I am today, which is quite aligned to really what I'm really glad I'm doing what I'm doing right now, learning every day and learning new things, and have a direct contribution to the people who I treasure a lot, the caregivers, the teachers, the care staff that actually take care of our adults and students with autism.
Thanks, Pawa. Nice. I think Pawa shared about like the first half of that moving from like the corporate service setting into the social service setting, and then he put a disclaimer for the second half of the thing to he'll share more about the functional switch lah, moving from what he's more familiar with in project migration into learning and organizational development lah.
Actually, that's already what I mean. Some of you may I just because I spent 30 years in technology and various high tech area. Sometimes when you talk to different people, the moment they see that is they will frame you up, box you up that hey, there's technology, so you should be able to do something in that manner. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, probably that's the one that gave me the opportunity to go in the first place. But I guess I at that point in time, I don't feel that I want to be bounded by that. There's more things that we can give.
I think at that time, if I'm not wrong, the project was migrating their volunteer management system.
Oh yeah. So it was it's part of like as in any organization on social services. We St. Andrews had a volunteer management, volunteer group, volunteer management. So there's they do not have a proper system in place. So they're in the process of migrating what they have right now to Salesforce.com, right? I know what we call the volunteer management system. Yeah, but that was a project work. But the project work was really in the early design stage. So really, it's like one meeting a month. so that also gave me a lot of bandwidth to do many other things. But that was also one of the problems. If it's just a single task alone, if you just see the job as a single task, that's very limited in some ways. But I mean, I think this is where during that period of time we were actually very close to a large event called Walk of a Lifetime. So that allowed us to really, I mean, basically all hands on deck, right? So we were asked to help out in many things, logistical things, move this, move that. Uh, and a lot of times we were collecting, we were giving up, we were servicing people who came to collect their goodie bags and so on. And as part of the process, we'll market our vegetables. We have a farm in St. Andrew's Autism Centre actually. So we were selling vegetables. So all sorts of interesting things. So in a sense, that actually allowed me to get to know more people in the organization, including my current boss, Abel, as well as get to know how the overall organization work. I get a chance to talk to the leaders of the various services, which is the real work that's being done over there, right? The challenges that they have in terms of turnover, how do you keep staff motivated, and so on. So it was through all sorts of interesting fundraising activities and other stuff that you get informal sessions and get to know different people. Um, yeah, so that's the part where if you talk about the returnship scope itself, that was the 3 months. It's after 2 months, in a sense, I've done what I could. I was actually on the verge of saying, hey, maybe I should just stop, right? Because it's December, most people are on leave. But this is where I felt I'm thankful. I think Bernard, the CEO, as well as the head of HR, Dan Nandan and putting down, had some conversation with me. And then for some strange reason, we sort of like, wondering where's the part that align. So that's where my ACLP training, which was just a few months back, and they were doing some areas around building up competency model and so on. So for that conversation, suddenly things like skills future framework, competency sort of click, and so that gave me a chance to actually. I mean, he sort of offered me like, hey, maybe during the December holidays, why don't you try to do something around there? So that's where I got started, and I was I was excited. I was on full force. I think I over delivered. So Abel was very happy and also motivated. We all share quite a lot of things together that what we want to do for the organization. So although the returnship the program ended, at that point in time they don't really have headcount for me, but what they did was to offer me a part-time role, a very flexible role. So I could come in anytime I want, as long as about 2.5 days a week, to continue this work that I was doing with him. So that built up from competency model, learning programs, talent management. It sort of built up more and more, and it became, in some sense, through that whole little task, it became initiatives. It became various contact point to even the leadership team in the overall St. Andrew's Autism Centre. And I think finally in April this year, they managed to figure out a headcount, and they offered me the headcount. And to be fair, I think I'm grateful for the offer, but I think for myself, I also require that whole 6 months of understanding, learning, taking the baby steps, taking the bigger steps, um, doing something not too right, and then coming back again. That I was a lot clearer that hey, this is for me. I'm willing to commit for a longer period of time. So, so I guess it was the whole process from returnship to all the various work that I do, to where we are now.
Thanks for that. Oh, I'm so happy to hear a story. I think this the wow. I think hearing like how do you overcome like the initial returnship project, right? About how actually the sort of like the initial scope was actually smaller than what you had envisioned. And then suddenly, I think because of the work of a lifetime, and then how you took the initiative to talk to various departments, getting to know the different leaders, and then getting to understand how the SSA operates, and then after that finding your footing in with like the different departments and the different leaders, and then now having like almost feeling like you scope out a role, and because the organization sees the value in what you're contributing, and that's why there is a longer term engagement lah. So this is like, wow, this is perfect. But I think I also want to switch gears to hear more from like Wendy, right? Because I think Wendy, she is our trainer for the returnship program. She has also helped us actually coach
Mm,
several of the returnees, what we call returnees, people who are from the program, to better help them to, how do you say, transition into the sector. Maybe Wendy, you so many angles that we can we could tackle this, but let's talk about seeing both, because a lot of the individuals here are from the corporate sector, right?
right.
Seeing hiring from the corporate sector versus like seeing hiring from a social service sector, right? Seeing talents, I guess, talents
Mm.
on both sides of the ends, right? Like what do you think makes hiring a senior professional into a social service organization any different? And what do you look for?
Right. So I think what Pua had shared was very pertinent, right? To kind of flesh out, how would we do it differently? I think with corporate talent, oftentimes, we're I mean, while if it's green harvesting and we're looking at young talent, etc., we provide that internship opportunity, and then they come in. But that's largely around helping them to understand, being a student versus corporate life. We hardly have opportunities for senior or lateral hires where you say, come in for a project or come in for an internship, and then we decide if there's chemistry and, if we're able to work with each other. So with looking at bringing, good talent into to social service sector, I actually do believe in Courage Chapter's approach. And that angle, that we've taken where we provide that opportunity for them to work on projects together, start building that kind of relationship. And I think more importantly, it's really about allowing both parties to kind of find that alignment between culture and the way I work, the personality that I bring into the room, or how do I adjust my corporate experience with the realities of social service sector itself. The other thing that is very very important that Pawa actually mentioned is providing returnees or senior talent coming into social service sector that opportunity to be amidst the beneficiaries and to truly understand what kind of impact are we looking at and to find your own bearing and your own calling in that space, right? So with that, Justin, to your question, second part of the question, which is around, what is that additional thing or that differentiator I would look out for, now that I'm back, being HR in social service sector. To me, and this is work that I had the opportunity to explore actually with St. Andrew's Autism Center as well, right? To start, it's the idea around how do I lead by serving, right? Because in the corporate world, a lot of us, those of you in this room as well, even in government service, what we're familiar with, it's, leadership responsibility comes with authority. And oftentimes it becomes kind of transactional because there is a clear expectation of what you give to the team and what the team is expected to give to you. But what I've experienced in the start of my career, and today, I'm revisiting that once again. It's really the concept around how do I lead by serving, and it really means that even if you are a program manager or a social worker, then how the question is how do I serve? How am I in service to my clients? Right? If you're a leader that's functioning within the agency itself, then question is how am I serving my team members? Right? It's less about what am I expecting from them, and therefore what do they have to give to me? Right? So to me, it's really that aspect where individuals, especially senior talent, are able to kind of what we call upend the pyramid, right? So really bring that responsive attitude to your employee, to your beneficiaries. Come from the angle of how can I help? How do I facilitate that growth? And the idea here is to really shift that corporate habit, right, that we all have, which is, I want to succeed. I want to put my team out there. I want to be that face of that success, the face of that deal, the face of that next transformation in the organization. To ask ourselves, how do I multiply my impact through others, through my team members, through my beneficiaries, through a broader ecosystem. Yeah, so I think that's where I see the differentiator, and it's becoming very real to me myself. And I'm sharing this very openly because I'm having to, shift those mindsets as well. Having been in corporate, rising through the ranks from regional to global, etc. It's a lot about me and the miracles that I can make happen. But in today's context, I'm really taking many steps back and asking myself, how do I get that done through others?
That is beautiful. Poa, sorry, do you have something to say?
It's okay.
No?
No, it's
Okay. Um, it's a little bit quieter in the chat. Maybe I could raise one question from the initial Zoom signed up. I think one because I think because of what the Courage chapter does, right? I think traditionally we look at senior professionals or what we call the mid-career professionals. I think some of them have concerns about age. And I think the question was really, if I read word for word, is there really an age limit to join the social service sector? And how does the sector perceive about older workers?
Right.
Wendy, you want to take the question or not?
Okay, I'll take a stab at it, and then Poa, you can share your real life experience as well.
sure.
Mm,
So my immediate response is there is no age to this.
mm,
Why? Because how I see, that transition from corporate into social service, it's really that aspiration as a sector for us to start creating a skills marketplace kind of concept, right? So it's no longer about bringing in a talent and then that talent grows within an agency for many many years, right? Question is, for those of us who are savvy, we've come from corporate careers, can we bring a specific skill, a specific mindset into this space, right? And if that's the case, then age really doesn't matter because it is, your ability to contribute to the traditional mindsets, the structures that's within the social service sector. And if I can be really honest here, I left social service maybe for a good 15 years or more. And coming back, I really wish, that the sector could have, progressed a lot more than what I'm seeing today. Yeah, so I do think if I take it from that angle and that we're just looking at a refresh of mindsets, refresh of skill sets within the sector itself, age doesn't matter. And for that matter, I've been, working on this transition of mine in the last 5 years, spending the last 2 years really, like what Koa mentioned, experimenting. So putting myself in different capacities, right? Be it volunteers or facilitating leadership workshops or coming in as a consultant and looking at processes, etc. So really coming at it from different angles, right? And no one at all in this 2 years, active journey of mine, no one has looked at me and said, "You mean you're transitioning back at this age?" Right? Or, have my CEOs and all this that I've worked with who are super wise human beings, right? None of them have also asked like, okay, how much would you know as, someone that looks slightly younger than all of us in this room? Yeah. So I would say age doesn't matter at all. And you can start working on it, now. Think of it as a pendulum, if you ask me, right? You might take big steps, big swings, right? And walk in and do a fractional role, leave your corporate career. That's a huge decision. But you can also take small little sways, right? Go volunteer, take on a project, spend one day of immersion, take a few days off your leave and do that, right? So these small little sways, but for all you know, you might return to where you originally started and then get back into corporate career for another 2 to 3 years. And when the time comes, right, and you're ready, that might be 5 years out, 10 years out. You never know, right? But along the way, at least, what I'll say is break that inertia, take some steps, and stay curious about the sector itself.
Not to contradict anything, sometimes age makes a lot of difference in terms of, just a joke aside.
Yes,
I've been
please.
called a baby boomer when I was accused by some young coaches just because I made some old man's
Mm,
remark, whatever. But beyond that, right, age has got
mm,
nothing to. I think age has got very little to do. I think it's more of your own perception of some other things that you might think is related to the age. If you are carrying yourself, like for example, oh, I've been 30 years in the general manager, I'm the Asia Pacific boss dealing with $200 million a year, whatever stuff. That whether call it the identity or sometimes ego, which
mm,
may be related with age. Those are things that I think sometimes prevents us from uh, getting out of that mindset to try something different.
mm,
Um, but just from my own personal experience, I towards the later part of my previous career, I was getting very comfortable, right, in the solutioning technology. But in my last 6 months in St. Andrews, wow, the amount of things I've read, I'm forced to read, I'm forced to learn, the amount of AI I need to use, I felt my capacity to learn is like in my young days, younger days. So I think that is a result of other factors, right? Uh, your commitment to what you believe that you are doing is the right path for you. And for me, like what Wendy mentioned, being curious in what you're doing. So
mm.
for myself, I do bring my own standards of when I do something, I want to do it with pride and do it well. But my knowledge at the moment is not too, it's not that high, right? So there's a lot of gap. So in terms of the knowledge of the type of work, even the whole sector, I'm still a relatively newbie. But because of that learning motivation is very, very high. The capacity to absorb is also very, very high. So in some sense, the last few months is I feel really, really young actually. So so my conclusion is not the number age. It's
Mm.
really your own self, right? Whether it's a mindset thing,
Yes.
where you see, where you try, and those are more important. And just to add on to that, in St. Andrews, as I start to talk to more people, there are quite a lot of other people who are retired, but they may be taking a part-time job there or full-time job, but doing something simpler or something where it's aligned to their own life in their own current stage of life as well. So, I'm not the only one. There are others that I've seen around, and they are doing very, very good work in the organization. And I think they are leading a very fruitful, life at that stage of it.
Thanks, Pawa. I think it's very, very, I think it's a beautiful, beautiful sharing. And now we have some questions in the Zoom chat lah. Maybe we can get to it.
Mm.
We can start with this question. What are the benefits that social sector is looking at in terms of taking on experienced corporate staff? Basically, I think the question, if I were to rephrase it, right, is like
Mm.
why would the charities actually take in people from the corporate setting, someone who has that doesn't really have a full so-called the employment history or employment experience in the social service sector. Um, I think I would defer it to Wendy if you have any
Yep.
like points of view on this.
Right. So, first up, I think traditionally, because of how the industry's benefits and everything is structured, right, they've never had the first takers when it comes to the best talent in the market. And I think most of us would be agreeable and have observed the same. So lesser so to be able to grow this talent within their organization, right? And that explains that openness, right? If I can't pay and grow for this talent, within my organization, then at some point, am I still able to benefit from their experience, right? So to me, I think one of the best advantage we can get, from really leveraging on this group of senior talent, it's the outside in perspectives and that fresh lens that they can bring in, right? Industry best practice, etc., typically goes to where the corporate world is because corporate will pay for, this kind of development, this kind of piloting. right? And the beauty of a senior talent that is considering and eventually takes a decision to come into social sector is I've got that experience, that outside in perspective, but at the same time, I'm also in the making of asking myself, how do I then nuance and contextualize it for social service? I think that openness is the other thing that social service sector can actually benefit from. I would also say from the perspective of strategic mindsets and leadership abilities, right? Having been in corporate space, right, there is an assumption, and I do think it's true, that we work at a very different level of effectiveness, efficiency, and being able to push things through. That executional mindset is very strong, right? In social service sectors, oftentimes, effectiveness and efficiency gets taken over and override by things like resource constraints. Do I have the capacity to be working on yet another project? Or do I have the money to even be investing? Or we could plan till the cows come home, and then the next thing we know is funds didn't come in, grants didn't come through, right? So the executional mindset and ability to take things to the end and be able to measure impact has actually been a roadblock for the social service sector itself, right? And where I've seen, senior talent coming in from corporate, the ability to function at a much more strategic level and really take very innovative steps to work around grant issues,
Mm.
or getting more capacity, different forms of workforce coming in, to kind of prop that project and bring it through, right? Has been a very different ball game. Yeah, so to me, that is the other thing that corporate talent has to offer when we walk into social service sector: the ability to problem solve, look into innovative solutions. We've just had the opportunity to flex and grow that in ourselves, where the corporate space is a lot more.
Mm. Yeah.
Well, anything to add about that, like
I
given
think Wendy.
yourself in
Yeah.
the that outside in perspective?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with what Wendy has mentioned, but I will also just remove it. I think they are always looking for good, experienced people. The corporate part, yeah, some elements of it from if it's from the private sector and so on. Because the outside in sometimes it's just something different. They're
Mm.
seeing from another perspective. So I think that part is important. Um, so I mean, the last returnship, I didn't really like to use the word corporate because in some corporate environment, it could also be very mission driven and so on in my mind. So yeah,
Mm.
yeah, I think. But to be fair, you talk about elder care and so on. When I talk to some of the leaders, they are always looking out for good people because when you talk about whether it's getting more strategy in thinking, Singapore is doing a lot more in this stage of time with the, with the aging population and a bit more inclusive in nature. So there's a lot of things that are scaling as well. So this is where I think a lot of the traditional corporate experiences are able to see that, oh, I've been through this before, right? It's not, there's no what they call a limitation that I think some of them um, uh, will not have, right, when they are working from some larger organizations as well.
And maybe just to chime in, given that we've also spoken to several employers as well, I think if people who are in the social service sector and not from the sector, right? I think it almost feels like two different worlds. They don't really like interact with one another. So what this means is that when when it comes to like talent, right? The access to talent, it's always like a merry-go-round. Like this person hire from this social service, this charity, then it just goes around. So the circle is very small. And what we're trying to do here with the social service returnship, right, is that we're trying to inject like fresh, new, different perspective of the corporate, the people who probably the charity settings doesn't traditionally think of, but yet I think they have gain a certain level of clarity. And now it's time for them like, maybe like this is something that I'll like pursue in my next chapter. I'm not asking you to directly like do convert into full time, but is there a way that a trial period for me to just test water a little bit? I think what Wendy talked about is that can you take like small steps, whether is it coming for our returnship program, whether is it taking on a returnship project, or whether is it going to a nearby active aging center to volunteer as well. So these are the baby steps that you can take to also just have a better glimpse and better understanding of what the social service sector is about. Before deciding whether like is what you had envisioned? Is it that you truly want to participate in? Wow, okay, very good. Now got so many questions. Moving on to the next one. What have been the types of roles, functions successful transitioners have gotten to, and how related were these to their previous career experience? Mm. Wendy, would you want to share more? I think also because you have like
Yep.
coached a few of our returnees as
Yes.
well.
Right. So I'll share this in terms of a story, right? There was a coachee that I was working with, a returnee that I was working with, and she used to come from a regional country management role, sales, luxury brand, etc. Right? And her first step into the returnship program and then getting into projects, etc. Eventually ended up being in a space of fundraising, volunteer management, right? And well, I guess the common thread that you're seeing over here is in her role as a regional country manager, it was a very ops related role, right? And therefore, the ability to push through programs and then ensure that she's mapping volunteers, etc. So that's a little bit about customer mapping, isn't it? Right? An ability to see where opportunities are, etc. Those were transferable skill set, right? And the fact that she was, in that space where a luxury brand is, it also spoke a lot about her ability to manage stakeholders, right, at different levels, be able to understand their needs, right, and therefore, be able to pitch, market, right, and bring forth suggestions to them, keep that relationship going, right? Those were the sets of skills that she has that eventually landed very well in terms of when you fundraise, can I start stretching? A lot of the service agencies today are asking ourselves, besides the run-of-the-mill donors that we have coming through online and coming to our different fundraising events, are we able to build that pipeline of more sustainable high net worth donor lists, that will keep with us for a long time and are looking at really longer term proposition in terms of co-branding, corporate social responsibility, that kind of angle. Yeah. So that was a story, a long way to answer your question. But I think the idea over here is we are really looking at a set of transferable skills in this transition, not exactly an apple to apple kind of mapping in that sense, right? So your current corporate title, your work title might be something, right? But where Courage Chapter comes in, the beauty of it is then we look at the set of skills that you have, the experience that you have, and then we ask ourselves, how do I then map that against the needs of social service sector, right? And based on the skill set, then you might end up with a title that doesn't sound like what you've been doing for a good 20 years of your life, right? But if I zoomed in and said, okay, this is the roles and responsibility of this person, then I see, customers becoming beneficiaries, becoming donors, becoming volunteers, right? Where we talk about how do I sustain relationships, keep commitments going, design for, constant engagement. This might be sales and promotions, but over here is, how do I keep a good flow of beneficiary engagements, etc., so that they see that purpose and they keep up, that commitment to my organization.
And I think that translate segue really nicely to the next question, right? So, because it basically the answer is like it depends. It depends on your set of
Mm,
transferable skill sets and how does that map against the needs
right.
to the social service sector, right? So maybe like we zoom out a little bit more. There's a question asking about what are the talent needs of today, the challenges, right, that
Mm.
the sector is seeking for, so that where are the pockets of opportunities that we see corporate folks can transition into the social service sector.
Right. So I'll take a step at that first, just very quickly. And I mean, the good news for us, if I may frame it that way, right, is that the emerging trends in the social service sector ain't that different from what we're seeing in our corporate world currently, right? So there is a lot of talk around, can we have more integrated service delivery, right? Agency A might be very good at this, agency B might be good at something else, but can we start looking at ourselves as the ecosystem that's supporting potentially overlapping client groups, etc. Right? Every neurodivergent child that sits in St. Andrew's Autism Center, if I could use them as an example, comes with a family, right? Parents that require support, right? So how do we ensure that, as a broader ecosystem, we are working with that? So that's integrated service delivery, right? Which corporates are also asking ourselves, where are the unconventional partnerships that we can go into so that we all, instead of competing with market share, can we start collaborating so that we are owning every client on the street? The other space is technology, right? And I don't have to say more about that. Technology disruptions, all the way from digitization to digitalization, right? Social service needs that, and we're kind of behind the curve, if you ask me, versus corporates out there that's able to pay, right, and get things moving much faster. Shifting demographics, that's the other challenge or emerging trend, right? Where in the social service sector, as much as in corporate, we talk about customer demographics shifting. With social service, we're also seeing family structures, aging population, new stresses that's coming with the economy shifts that is hitting us as well, right? And of course, then all of this will then translate to a set of skills that is a lot more in demand today, which social service sectors are looking for, which a lot of us in this room would have, right? Which is more around change management, right? Our ability to build collaborative processes, practices across disciplines, across different sectors as well. So not keep within social service itself. Can we start building bridges with corporate? Can we start building bridges with different charities, government, right? For example, there is also program development, implementation, evaluation, all of this research, risk management. Risk management is a huge thing with charity and social service currently, right? And in a very broad sense, our ability, having come from corporate experience, to kind of research, use data, study, build narratives that will then drive the strategic direction of your social service agency going forward. Yeah, so these are skill sets that even my organization with YWCA, we are looking out for, right? And so someone might come in as a fundraising manager, right? A corporate talent comes in. But we ask ourselves, is this person able to drive program delivery? Right? Is this person able to also look at change management because we're transforming the organization and I need a leader that's able to, ride this wave with the organization itself. Yeah. Pawa, over to you.
Why are mute?
So I don't think I have that much to add to what Wendy has covered. There's a big range. Maybe I'll cover what is. I feel all of us all have already a certain set. You've been working in a corporate for the last 20 years or so. There's something that is transferable. But the bigger one that you probably need to bring across would be call it adaptability, call it change, the growth mindset. That's the one where corporate may have used such languages, but whether you are or not, that's another matter, what you've gone through.
Yeah.
So I think those are, for myself, those were the more important things I felt to overcome initially, right? Before I get into the full-time role.
Growth mindset, learning appetite, being adaptable, being agile.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, I'm just very mindful of time. We'll just get going with the questions, okay? But if there are questions that you would like to answer first, feel free to put a thumbs up. I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up. Oh, okay, I can see this individual. While we are happy, excited to still contribute in our current age, is the industry more open to individuals with more career runway? Yes.
No, can do better.
Is the
I
industry more
mean,
open?
yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
There's some parts of when going through the whole process, it does feel sometimes that is it an age thing? Is it a change of industry and so on? So at a certain point, I do feel a bit that way. It seems that I hope the doors are a bit more open to try. So I think one of the very good programs, not to sell, but I think the returnship is a way for us to get in first. So I felt that's easy. I mean, versus you go around and try to apply, you still go through your CV and may not even come to you. You can have all the competency and so on, but it's still it's not like social service. Although they need a lot of people, but the whole process of recruitment and talent is, I think, is no. Correct me if I'm wrong, Wendy. Is as challenging as any other industry in a sense.
Right. So I'll weigh in a little on that. And I think that to me, it's actually one of the biggest shifts I've seen in social service returning after 15 years, right? I think it's a perfect timing kind of thing. Okay. So out there in the workforce, and I think a lot of us would have noticed, and some of you might, I mean, the individual that's asking us this question as well, coming out of COVID, right? And also, experiencing how the younger generation, so I'm really talking about the ones that's beyond your Gen X, right? We're seeing a lot more intentional efforts to design their careers, and what work-life balance looks like, and how much am I going to work, how is it 20 years, 30 years, 40 years of my life, right? So there's a bit of that effect. Plus, coming out of COVID, people are rethinking. Am I looking at a work life that is going to be many many years on, doing and repeating the same thing all over again, or am I running after a different equation, a joy equation, a purpose equation? Okay, or as simple as, can I take something lighter so that I'm able to reclaim more time and be with the family? Right? So when people are rethinking this, it's a good sign that I'm also seeing and observing in my conversations with different CEOs and senior leadership within the social service sector, that appetite to start opening the doors to external talent. So people who are external to the industry and to the sector itself. Okay. And to us, increasingly, it is almost like a bingo, if I find someone that has that calling, is interested in making that transition, and yet still has headroom for growth. Okay, of course, then that translates to, from a talent perspective, organizations that are beginning to, open our doors to corporate transitions, right? And people who are coming through, from different experiences in life. We are also actively asking ourselves, what does succession planning look like? And what does development and growth look like for an individual? Okay, who is coming in at a young enough age and might potentially still be able to take on that one or two advancement in their careers. Yeah, so I think that has become a very live conversation. In fact, and it's not just within the sector itself, with vendors that we're working with, and I'm not talking about small SMEs, etc. People, HR systems providers like Workday. I've been sitting in seminars and workshops where, the topic of the day, or the topic for that 2 to 3 hours, is really, how can we start reviewing and relooking at the talent agenda within the social service sector, so that we're able to attract younger talent from outside the sector itself, and we're able to retain them as well, right? So we, as the sector itself, we do not want to only be attracting people who are really in the last season, of their careers, or last season of their life. We are really open, and we're hoping that younger people will choose us as well, right? So I really thank you for that question, because yes, there is a current openness increasingly, and very easily a sign of it is when I sit in workshops and seminars like that. I have good representation of 20 odd different agencies, and we're all singing the same tune. We want, but we're also asking ourselves, how then do we provide growth for these people?
Lovely. And I think talking about longer career runway, I think one of the challenges that we see, I think that's also to answer the next question, right? It's about pay.
Mm,
Because after I see Wendy smiling, because like after you have built up, there's a certain lifestyle, right, that you're almost like attuned to. So
mm.
how should someone sort of like overcome or like think about or reconcile with that trade-off?
Pawan, you want to start sharing that while I take a breather?
I'm still going through that actually, but
Still adjusting, huh?
uh, I think it differs with various people. I mean, there are some families where financially is still you still need to work for it. I think they understand
Yes.
that. Even for myself,
Mm,
some people think that I'm all settled. So no. I mean, I still have, especially kids. I still need to bring in the savings
mm,
for the next many
mm.
years. So I'm not going to retire anytime soon. I'm not going to retire at all. So, but financial part is one that I think everybody have their own way, but you do need to come to that. I don't call it settlement. It's an open discussion. For example, I will have with my hiring manager.
Mm.
It's something that I have to, before I even make that decision, I realize how the pay is such a great difference um, with my family, my wife, and so on. So I just feel it's something. But at the end of the day, I have to make that call that it's the right decision. It's a responsible decision because it's enough for my family. But I'm serving an area, a purpose that I really believe that's important to me. So some of those factors will have to come in to make that decision. Um, and I mean, like I said, a lot of people have the. I mean, I remember in the old days where you go for those financial advisor, right? They tell you need how many tens of millions of dollars to maintain your life and so on. But I realize when you're a little bit older in the age, do you really need that much? So I think things mindset also change. Your lifestyle also will change with time as well. So some of the old assumptions of what your financial needs are, it's okay to have an open mind to relook at it as well.
Right. So with this question, I will share as an individual. So someone that has, taken that transition and like Boa, it's a constant thing that keeps coming out, right? How much is enough, right? How much money is enough for me? How much money is enough for my family? How much money is enough in terms of retirement planning? I think that's at the back of all of our minds, right? So number one rule for me is please come in informed, right? And the salary guidelines for social service sector isn't a black hole, huh? Okay, it's published. You can find it on the internet, right? It gives you a sense, right? All the way from if you were CEO or executive director of an agency, what do you expect, right? And it even tells you based on the size of your agency, there is a difference in that range as well, right? And then coming down, social workers, coming down, head of functions. I think for some of us, it's head of functions, right? Managerial levels that you're thinking of, right? It comes all the way down to being a program executive. Okay, what kind of ranges are you looking at? So coming in informed is definitely an important one. Okay, and I would just share ballpark, just from my familiarity with the salary space, right? Being in the HR aspect, typical step down that you would expect is about 30% at least. Okay, and I'm talking about agencies that have already come around to be much more savvy in the talent management space, right? The agencies that I spoke about earlier on, who are like open to corporate talent and everything, we are aspiring. I won't say we are there yet, but we're aspiring, to close the gap and be in the space of 20 to 25, right? So that it's not too painful for good senior talent trying to transit into the sector itself. Okay, so these are all just ballpark figures, right? That I can really just give you guys a sense of where the sector is currently. But to me, if I share very personally, the one of the biggest shift I've seen I needed from a mindset perspective is how do I define what I earn? So in the past, it's a direct relation with how successful I am. Okay, how much I get to earn, the amount of time I invest in my job is like a 24-hour, three different time zones, etc. So remind yourself, what does that salary used to mean for you? Okay, and then question is, what is the currency for you in this season when you're thinking about transitioning? Is your currency still money, or is your currency more about time, or is your currency more about your skill set, your expertise? Right? And therefore, what is it that you're trading off in that decision that you make? So for me, like I said, the biggest mindset shift for me is, am I really thinking about how much I get to earn on a month-on-month basis, or is it how much I can save? One of my biggest realization, and I'm not, I won't be shy, and I'll admit that it made me look at myself in a very, very different way, right? When I reflect, is when I was in a corporate career and I had zero time. So zero time currency. Okay. Of course, I had more money, right? What then happened from a lifestyle perspective is a lot of crazy spending, emotional spending, right? Trying to make up for that amount of time I spend at work. Every time I get to shop, I tell myself I'm allowed to spend a lot. So that's one, right? A lot of emotional spending, overspending. The amount of tax that you pay, let's be really logical. When you're earning a lot more, tax is also a lot more, isn't it? Right? So net net in today's context, I ask myself instead of how much I plan to earn, okay, I spend a lot more time working around how much do I plan to save, right? And at this point of time, it's still experimental for me. I'm observing how this goes, but I somehow get a sense that my amount of savings might actually be much better than when I was in a corporate career because I don't take $50 lunches these days, right? I take $20 lunches if I was in town, and then a simple $4 or $5 can settle a meal, when I'm with my team, etc. Right? So the way you spend, the amount of tax that you pay, and your every holiday needs to be a long drawn, really luxurious one. When I'm in a corporate career versus focusing on family time today, right? And designing for experience when I curate holidays, etc. Those are little shifts I've made, right? And I none of these shifts actually makes me feel that I'm being compromised, right? It really just helps me plan my savings much better, and I might end up being richer in many ways, I'm guessing. So ask me again in a year's time, right? If you bump into me on the streets, okay? And I'm happy to share more.
Nice, nice. Just for context, right? I think the salary guideline, I've already put it in the chat as well. So for those who are curious, please have a look at that. And I really like what Wendy was sharing, right? I think in terms of the value in the bank, I think it's not just the monetary side of things, but I think in the
Mm,
emotional value side of things as well, where you feel a lot richer. Okay, as I just going through the question, there's a question here about, I think because Wendy, you've identified change management, digital transformation as
right.
one of the skills that the
Yep.
sector is looking for as well, right?
Mm,
What then is that X factor that the social services is looking for so that individuals um can at least be called out for an initial chat about the role and the environment and the culture fit?
mm. Okay, so with this question, how would I put it? Um, Actually, when I see a senior talent CV coming through, my recruitment inbox, right? Oftentimes, the last thing I look out for it's the competency mapping. Okay, the first two things I look out for. Okay, typically number one would be what is the motivation, right? Very loosely said, it's like what's your calling? Like, why are you wanting to make this shift? Right? And therefore, how are you thinking around the tensions that might come up, right? Are you aware and are you at least thinking also about the trade-offs that's going to happen, right, when you make such a transition? Okay, so really an indication that this person is not just coming in as an idealist, and thinking that oh, it'll be so good to end off my career or take that next step and do good, right? Yeah, so interestingly, I am looking for a realist. I want to see someone and understand what's that thinking process. So that's number one, right? Number two, for me, it's really the chemistry and the commitment, right, to stay on, right? And then last is when I take a quick look at the competency and say, okay, I need change management. This person has, kind of thing. Because truth be told, right, as much as I'm looking out for like someone that can bring that outside in perspective, right? But I think both Jess and Poa has spoken quite a little bit about this, right? But the large part about it is your ability to, or your want to contextualize, and therefore your ability to adapt and be resilient on this journey when you're contextualizing, right? Because as much as you come in, you're very passionate, you want to give your all. Question is, where is the organization? Where is your team? Are they ready to chong with you already from the onset? Or do they need a bit of hand holding to get them there? Okay. And that to me is contextualization. And are you willing to pause, wait, Be resilient if they push back and say that sorry, but we don't believe in your vision. Be ready to take it if they look at you and say you don't even come from social service. What do you know about us and our reality? Yeah. So I think I'm looking for someone that really have that calling, and then the other one is the commitment and that ability to find that chemistry with the team.
Oh, so calling, commitment for the transition, including the
Mm,
patience to want to contextualize that skill sets. And then
yes.
the last thing that you actually look at is the competency.
Mm.
Okay, I'm just putting it in the chat. Okay, I think we've tried. We are actually looking for the last like 15 minutes to actually go through
Mm.
what the program is about. I think some of them are
Nice.
actually asking about actually what's the leadership program about? What's the commitment level? Okay, we can get to that, but I think I'm just asking for any last call of the questions since we have Paula and Wendy here. Okay, maybe what I will do is that we can have our panelists take a 10-minute breather while I go through a little bit more about the program. Oh, Wendy looks so relieved. And then I will share what the program is about, and we can leave like last 5 minutes for any last burning questions.
Mm.
But of course, you have my email lah, so feel free. Okay, let me just head back to the slides and I could share my screen. I have so many tabs open. 1 second. Where is my deck? Give me okay, there it is. I'll put you here so I can see. And then okay, let me share my screen. Go to Zoom on. Okay, let me just put on slideshow so everybody could see better. Okay, all right. So okay, back to the social service internship, right? I think just now there was a question about the benefits of why the sector would like to look outside to look for corporate experience coming in. I think this is our answer to them is that they would have access to experienced professional, including those with deep functional expertise. A lot of our professionals, they came from various functions, but typically they come from HR, finance, fundraising, or in other words, business development, marketing, digital transformation. Like what Wendy mentioned about fresh perspective outside in. This is also a trial engagement. I think it's not just on what we call the participants side, right? It's actually both ways and see whether this is a low risk, low cost ways to assess whether or not is this the right fit for you. And this is there is a 3-month project collaboration on both sides. If there's a fit on both sides, then there will be a project match. And of course, there would be the idea of a capacity lift. So immediately hands-on support for the social service to tap upon our participants to help them improve processes, strengthening things like volunteer engagement or donor relationships. And what we're trying to do here is actually a shared sector pipeline. So what we do here is that there would be what we call our participants or our returnees, right? The pool will get bigger and bigger so that this does not just like one-to-one matching of like A charity, B charity, C charity. But the idea is that if this person finishes a 3-month project, the person can then roll off and then roll onto a different charity, really also just to get exposed to the different mission and different calling and the way of how different sizes, different mission alignment would appeal to the individual as well. So that's an experience. And bridging skills with hard takes preparation and not just placements. I think unlike where we see, right, unlike a recruitment agency where we just do placements, right? I think where we see a gap in the industry is that our participant actually completes the appreciation course and the course itself, right, would have would have the element of the clarity so that the person understands that, hey, is this really the right place that I would like to invest my time and effort in? And after the course, there would be an immersion day where they actually take the time. The leaders of our partnering SSAs also take the time in understanding what are the realities of the operational realities and the problems on the ground. I think that briefly what Powa mentioned also. And I think the entire experience really is a very reflective journey on the values, motivation, and alignment of the sector. So for some of you who are still considering whether or not the social service sector is the so-called that next step or next chapter you like to pursue, I think where we see ourselves this program, and that's why it's also intentionally taking place on a weekend as well, so that you don't really have to purposely take so many days of leave, but it's really just a sample or a teaser session for you to think and get exposed like, maybe not now, but maybe like 2 to 3 years later, this is something that you might want to consider. And by the time that individuals who say that, hey, I'm ready to embark on my returnship project, what we can say is that the individual has understood the sector dynamics, has calibrated the expectations, and demonstrated like genuine commitment, like, hey, this is something that they would want to do or see themselves doing. And I think this is what our program entails, right? So where we're at is at this Ask Me Anything. So I think like what we have done last year and the other previous cohorts as well, I think we also want to make sure that people who are signing up for this program, they are also aware about what they're getting themselves into. So that's why we have this session for people to really raise their curious questions. After which there would be an application, and then if you are selected for the program, then you would be invited to join that 3-day social service appreciation course. And we have Wendy, who's also on this call, who will be our trainer for the session. After which there will be a 1-day experiential visit to several SSAs. So you could see over there, that's actually Bernard, who's the CEO of St. Andrew's Autism Center. The program itself also includes networking and volunteering opportunities with NCSS, the National Council of Social Service as well. They are also our partner of this program, and they have been also very excited about our progress and how our program is faring so far, given that this is the third round. So fingers crossed for more opportunities for collaboration. And then if there's a match, then there would be a social service internship experience, and the participants from the latest cohort will get priority access to opportunities for the next 1 year. And if there's a match on both sides, then there will be a conversion for longer term engagement in the form of could be a part-time arrangement, fractional, or even a full-time employment as well. So this is what it means, but from a wordings perspective, I think some of the logos that you could see are some of our past partners that we've worked with previously. And then so this is some of our pictures that we've taken from the program itself. Very vibrant, very committed, and very. I think the past two cohorts have been I think the cohort has been really fun and warm, and I think like what Powa put it right. It's, I think, like-minded individuals who are curious. I think everybody brought in their learning mindset, their curiosity mindset, and really ask questions to the sector leaders, and also a lot of introspective question and journeying within themselves as well to see what is it that they would like to do. And some of them, to be honest, they decided not to pursue a returnship project because they feel that like, hey, maybe there's still something more they'd like to explore back at their corporate job, but they like to volunteer in other aspects instead. Okay, so the 3-day appreciation course itself looks at your current reality, looking at basically how the social sector, that philosophy and the ecosystem. We've talked about, I think Wendy mentioned about grants, funding, impact measurement, how does it actually work? Some of the common frustration that sector leaders have about corporate candidates. when we talk about impact, what does it mean in the social service sector and how do you actually measure that? So that's the reality. And then we move into reframe, right? Given that there is, I think, Hoa mentioned some personal identity or even like baggage that you might be bringing, that individuals might be bringing, right? How do you unpack some of these life experiences and then draw all these strengths and lessons to a new sector, to the social service sector? Understanding the difference between the corporate setting and the social service setting, and also some of the unspoken nuances, right? We talked about pay. We briefly maybe mentioned a little bit about pace, but I think there's also a lot more to be unpacked. Skills relevancy, things like being overqualified. And then how do you then learn how to translate that past experience into social sector relevant value? We also then do a repositioning. So having yourself been through that three-day program, right? Then helping you getting a clearer sense of what kind of roles actually fit your season of life. The kind of like different sorts of models of contribution, be it in the form of projects, fractional, or even skilled volunteerism. I think there are some individuals who've um they have, I think, not just one, I think they volunteer with like 1 to 3 charities just doing like skills volunteerism. But that's what the individual really enjoys spending the time with because of the mission and the vision of what the SSA is about. And then of course you need to understand the trade-off, right? As in the idea of the pace, the compensation, ambiguity, and some of the resource constraints that you encounter. So because the cohort is intentionally kept small, so there is actually almost like a personalized pathways rather than just apply on the job board and then hoping that somebody gets back to you. So overall really is having that like-minded community together with the Courage chapter, together with Wendy, and how to help you gain new confidence to enter a new sector. These are some of the past projects that we have done before. I think some of you ask whether is it just for senior positions, but I guess really it's a spectrum, right? You have, and I think if you think about from a social service perspective, right, I don't think there is anybody just doing strategic work. I think everybody has to actually roll up your sleeve and do eh, basically all hands on deck. I think when Powa was talking about Walk of a Lifetime, which is a fundraising event, I think you also have to go down. I think if you need to do logistics work, you have to do logistics work, right? I think it doesn't have that. It's really like all hands on deck and rolling up the sleeve. I think you're expected to be operational as well. And these are just a sample of like some of the past projects that our returnees have done. So we talked about preparing the professional sides, which is our participants, but I think we also work very closely with our clients, the social service sector, to make sure that there's a clear project scope and deliverable. There is a dedicated courage facilitator, and of course, an option to hire after that 3 months period. Okay, the benefits of the social service returnship community. We have Immersion Day networking sessions and priority placements of 1 year for project placements. These are some of our past testimonials. And I think Bowa himself spoke about his testimonials here, but I think Bowa can see some of his past classmates here as well. Um, Yep, grounded expectations, in-depth exposure, structured pathways, and hands-on experience. This is Edmund's and Jenny's. Okay, past testimonials. I think we talked about the X factor, right? I think with the returnship program, it's not a direct acceptance. I think what we are looking for in terms of as in there is an evaluation criteria, right? Is that you don't need to have you don't need to come from the sector, but I think what we want to be upfront and say whether or not your skill sets are actually transferable to the sector as well. But I think more importantly, what we are also looking for is that the desire to serve, like what Wendy mentioned, and contribute to the social service sector. I think is that genuinely the sincerity and the genuineness to serve. I think we need to understand what's your motivation for applying for this program. And I think because on the other hand, the projects, the hiring managers are also curious to hear more about the fit as well. Of course, the strong learning agility and the willingness to relearn and unlearn. Again, strong persevering attitude and willingness to roll up sleeves. No task is too small attitude. Good through adjustment period. I think this is very, very fitting for what the panelists have shared just now. So these are our evaluation criteria. Okay, so these are the program details. The program runs for the 3 days runs across in July 11, 12, 18. And then there would be a 1-day immersion happening on the 24th of July. This would be taught and facilitated by sector leaders and practitioners. Wendy herself and together with other sector leaders have very kindly taken the time I think it's very nice because like everybody is invested and really wanting like this program to succeed. So for that, we're very thankful. And anyway, it's $800 for 4 days. And this time, cohort 3, we have a co-funding mechanism with E2I, which they have helped subsidize for $500. So in total, about $800 for 4 days. And it gives you 1 year of priority access to roles and projects and networking events co-organized with NCSS. So if you're interested, the QR code is over there.